All right, what is up, my peeps? Joshua Smith with another GSD mode podcast, and back with my good friend Jim Brown. What's up, Jim?
Hey, how's it going, man?
Good. How are you doing, dude?
Good. It's been a while.
Yeah, it's been a minute, man. It's been just life's busy, crazy times. I know that you've been really busy with some new interesting stuff that you got going on that I'm excited to talk about today. With that being said, man, let's just get into it, because I mean, this has been. I know both you and I are both very passionate about optimal living, healthy lifestyle. I mean, this is our vehicle to go out there and operate through this life through. And, but the specialty niche, if you will, and you've got a lot of different niches that you're into, within this space. And a lot of just past experience, whether that be just overall health and fitness, with bodybuilding, with a lot of different places in optimal health. But one thing that, even if we have listeners that have heard previous podcasts with you, I don't know that a lot know your kind of history when it comes to the heart itself. I mean, this has been career, not just a career, but a passion, a hobby, something that you paid massive attention to for a lot of years now, and have been very involved with too, from a work standpoint. And one thing I've always, really liked and respected about you is, you're one of the very few, when I coming from other kind of mentors or trainers I've hired in the past, or people I've talked to in the past, let's just say somebody's really into bodybuilding or CrossFit or wherever, they just kind of get tunnel vision in that, where you've always been so well-rounded, where it's about the whole picture, and how everything operates together. And so with that being said, man, I just want to get into this because it's heart health is I know we're in these times where we're sick of hearing probably the word epidemic, pandemic, one thing that blew my mind. I don't want to take anything away from, COVID and what's going on right now, because, obviously it is something that is, nasty out there and is a big issue, but through this, I'm like, well, why don't we have that same attention to something that kills, it has killed, currently kills, and will kill so many more people than COVID-19 will, or anything else. I mean, the number one killer is heart attacks, heart disease, right? With that being said, man, let's I don't know where the best place to start is. With if it's just awareness of why people need to pay attention to this, because I know that you've got some, a lot of preventative stuff that you guys are doing now today that we'll jump into too.
Well, I mean, let's talk about the proactive side of this. I mean, we've talked about TRT and hormone replacement and the importance of that for a long time. We've talked about diet and lifestyle and all that, and all those things lead to, reversing or slowing down the normal disease processes. And that one of those is, cardiovascular disease. And, just by proxy, if we're fit, we're lean, we're eating the right things, we're exercising, we're paying attention to some of the normal things that you would want to pay attention to, like blood work, and not seeing any big red flags. The hope is that you're going to have a healthy cardiovascular system. And that's in the proactive type anti-aging side of things. But on the normal side, normal people, we'll call them normies, I guess. If you think about it, we all know somebody that's died of a heart attack. I know countless people who have died of heart attacks that are young, and I'm not even putting in the fitness and bodybuilding people, but just normal people, guys 30 years old at work. I think the last one I was aware of, the guy was 47 years old, not under the care of a cardiologist. So he didn't really realize he had an issue and dropped dead, witnessed arrest, which means somebody saw him go down. They tried to help him, but by the time the ambulance got there, he was dead, just pronounced dead. And so we all know that. We've all had relatives maybe that have probably we all know relatives that have died of heart disease. And so, what's the failure here? Why is cardiovascular disease so prevalent in our society? I mean, is it because we're heavier? Everybody has more body fat. We're more sedentary. Is it all those things? I mean, that's not helping. That certainly isn't helping any of us. But really, I think it's in the way that we're treating cardiovascular disease and the way that, the typical pathway for a patient, and how they're tested and how that relates to reversing or catching disease in its early stages, so we can change it, so we can do something about it. So if you think about it, I've been doing some recently this last year. I got into some technical aspects of scuba diving, which means, kind of more high risk stuff. And so I really wanted to have an image done of my heart or some type of measurement to show what my real chances were of having a heart attack. Because I don't have that. You guys know me, who know me. I mean, I've done my blood work for 30 years now. I've paid attention to lipids. I've done all those things. I've had conversations with every type of doctor you can have, to go down the preventative route and to measure the status of my particular diseases, throughout the body and what I can do to manage them. And the cardiovascular one is kind of tricky. There's things that you can do that will predict your, how prevalent you are to have a heart attack or to have develop heart disease. But there's really nothing ever before that you can take and have a measurement of and measure how much, let's say soft plaque that you have. So the typical patient, you'll go into your general practitioner or your family doctor, you get a checkup and everything's fine. They look at your blood work. And if you're kind of within range, okay, everything's cool. Your blood pressure's okay. No big deal. Well, that doesn't catch how much soft plaque you have building up in your arteries. It doesn't catch, if you have occlusions or anything forming in your arteries, that's going to be a problem down the road. If something happens when you're getting a checkup, you have a murmur or they detect something or you have chest pain when you're exercising, then they'll start to look further and maybe run some tests and maybe, you'll end up in a cath lab where they'll actually do a visualization of your heart and see how much plaque you have, if you have any, lesions that are gonna blow up and become a heart attack. And we'll talk about that in a second. But typically that normal pathway, you're not gonna be seen or go to a cardiologist unless you have chest pain or some type of symptom that says, hey, I got something wrong with my heart. I need to really go to get checked. And even when you go to that office, you don't get the type of check that you need to see where your disease process is. So let's all back up just a little bit. So what do I mean with disease process and what happens in your heart? And there's a couple different things that can happen in your heart, mechanically and the electricity of your heart and those things. And we're not going to focus on that today. We're just going to focus on plaque. So your heart is basically a big muscle, and it has arteries that feed that muscle oxygenated blood. And when that muscle does not have oxygenated blood, it dies. That's what a heart attack is. So a heart attack is when a portion of your heart, usually, well, it depends where it is, but your heart muscle that contracts, when there's an interruption of oxygenated blood to that tissue, it dies. And it dies at a certain rate. So if you have a heart attack and you don't get to the cath lab for an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, well, you're going to suffer a particular death of tissue on your heart. And that could lead to, you need a heart transplant, or it could lead to you not being able to walk to the mailbox without being winded forever. So it's not, it's not to be taken lightly. When you have a heart attack, it's usually going to change the quality of life you have going on moving forward. So how does it flow get interrupted to your cardiac tissue? Through these veins, through these arteries? Well, you can have an occlusion. And occlusion is basically just a narrowing of your artery, right? I mean, that's the one that we typically think of. Like if I ask you, how did somebody have a heart attack? That's probably, most people will think, oh, well, my arteries got narrowed and they got hardened and they don't get enough blood in there, and that's what leads to a heart attack. Well, that doesn't lead to a heart attack. I mean, it could, but that's not really what a heart attack is. That will lead to chest pain under exercise. And when you go into a cardiologist's office and they do like a stress test, that's what they're looking for. They're looking for, if you have a symptom when you're performing exercise, that would lead them to discover an occlusion. And that might lead them to go in and then put a stent in to widen that up so that you don't have that symptom. But that's not what really, that's not the disease process of having plaque build up and then a rupture of plaque and a heart attack. So let's talk about that. So over time, plaque will accumulate in your coronary arteries, and that plaque will start out as soft plaque. And there's a couple different types of densities of soft plaque, but basically it's this kind of sludge and it's inside your artery. It's not in the lumen in the tube of your artery, but it's in the wall of your artery. And this plaque will accumulate in there and kind of develop what they call a lesion. And so the soft plaque makes like a little layer in the intima lining, which is the middle lining of your arterial wall. And as it goes on, it gets denser, it'll eventually, or it should calcify. And when it becomes calcified, it's kind of safe. When it's soft, it's dangerous. And so what really happens, well, what happens when that, to some of these lesions, they'll grow and grow and grow, and it'll be like a pimple. You'll have medium to fibrous soft plaque on the outside, and then you'll have like this liquidy hot plaque on the inside. So if this is your arterial wall, the blood's flowing down here and the rest of your body's outside here, you'll have this pimple form, and then this hot lava like stuff will come out, will crack out, or whatever happens to cause pressure. It might be caused by agitation on the arterial wall, whatever it is. This thing will pop like a zit, and when it does, it will rupture out inside in the interior of your arterial wall where the blood is. Well, your body will pick that up and will throw clots and start the clotting process because it thinks you're bleeding, which kind of you are, but you're bleeding inside your artery. That will form a clot. Now, either that clot will be so big that it'll block off that artery right there and stop oxygenated blood to your cardiac tissue, which is a heart attack, or it'll break off and then go down to a smaller portion, because as you go distally, or if you go down to the heart tissue, your artery becomes smaller and smaller and smaller and narrower because you're going eventually to capillaries. And so it'll clog the artery there. It'll stop blood flow to the artery, and that's a heart attack. And so that's basically what happens in a heart attack, or how you have the most common type of heart attack. So now, how do we track this soft plaque, and how do we know how much we have, right? Well, there's a couple tests that you can do to kind of guess what that value is. And one of them is called the coronary calcium scan. So when I say, Josh, what do you think of coronary calcium, or what do you think of calcium in your arteries in your heart? I mean, you think that's bad, right? It's bad and it's good, but yes, it's bad, but it's better than dangerous soft plaque that could be unstable, just like that pimple I just talked about. So really, when you get a calcium score, it does show you if you have any calcified plaque, and that relates to what your prediction is of having a heart attack. But sometimes it doesn't do that. It won't catch everything. So you could have zero calcifications, but still have those dangerous soft plaque lesions. But moreover, me as wanting to prevent disease and treat it and reverse it, I don't know how much soft plaque I have. I don't know what the status is of that soft plaque or how much is in it. And then if I take a statin, or I take fish oil, or I start to change my diet, I don't know if I've improved it at all. My blood work might change a little bit, but that doesn't really correlate to how much soft plaque I have. I mean, roughly, if your blood work's messed up for decades, we can assume that you have heart disease coming on, or you have soft plaque building up, but we don't know how much. We don't know what state it's in. And so that's kind of what we're dealing with. That's the current status of heart disease. By the time you get in front of a clinician and you have heart pain, the game is pretty much, you're in the fourth quarter already, man. You're not ahead of the disease at all. So does some of that make sense? Or
yeah. I mean, I heard the other day, and I don't, I don't have your knowledge base, and I'm, college dropout, not a doctor, but I heard the other day of like one of the difference between the heart versus other organs in the body is it doesn't regenerate tissue like the liver may, or like some of the other organs will, and that is
right.
One of the dangers of like you want to minimize as much damage as you possibly can, because even if it happens when you're young, and the rest of your body could, because how many people do we see that were alcoholics for a lot of years, damage their liver, but then catch it in time, they get clean, it regenerates, it's cell generation, whatever the terminology is there. And then, 5-10 years later, it's like they have a perfectly healthy liver, or maybe even less time than that. I'm just throwing out, time frame.
Yeah.
but, the heart being different than that. And then, everything that you mentioned up until really this new technology that I know you've been doing some work with, some of the most brilliant cardiologists on the planet, up until this time, like it's all been kind of number one after the fact, for the most part. Like, we were talking off air. It's been 20 years since I worked in the hospitals, and I was a nurse's aide. So I was just the guy that would bring people down to the, X-ray department to get these studies done and so forth, but it was like they do an echocardiogram, on the heart and look for calcium. But again, even though that's somewhat preventative a little bit, it's still after the fact,
Right.
And to your point, what you said earlier of, what is it? Every 30 seconds, somebody in America is dying of a heart attack.
I think it's 36 seconds. Yeah.
Yeah, every 36 seconds. And I used to always think and assume this was due to sedentary lifestyle and then food. And then recently I've been doing a lot of research and studies. And again, I'm not a doctor. I don't know this 100% to be true, but I've spent several hundred hours now going, down on some of this research and, really realizing that there's another component of this that I was completely unaware of, which, does make sense. But, with things like EMF pollution, we look at all these cell phone towers and all these, EMF fields that are out there and, all of that and how that can impact, our cells or genes and impact the heart too. So, I look at like, that's just intensifying. And, I was hearing something the other day on with this whole metaverse and like with the Oculus, how now there's people that are like, you're put on their Oculus and that have had heart attacks inside the, with the Oculus. And it's part of their terms and conditions that you have to release, liability from them. And not saying like anybody can make up their opinion on Oculus and metaverse and whatever. I'm not trying to have a conversation there, say that that's, bad or not. But, when you put those on, like it brings up a stimulation that, you wouldn't have elsewhere. Like there's, things that like you can go in there on a building and choose to jump off that building, but it can feel real. Right. So you're having people that have, now I'm not saying a tremendous amount, but so with technology like that we're going to have exposure to, plus EMF, if that indeed does have an impact on heart disease. I heard before really the introduction to EMFs outside of just like from stars and other natural inside the universe, but from telephone lines. And it really started with the introduction of the telegraph. But I heard, pre like 1890, before the invention of the telegraph, that heart disease was below accidental drowning for coming from deaths. And then after that, it started to become very prevalent. Well, correlation doesn't always mean causation with that. So that's about the time, early 1900s, where, our food system, slightly started changing on how we grew food and that's when our medical, industry completely transitioned here in the Western medicine. But I guess where I'm going with all of this is, I don't believe any longer that it's okay. Hey, if we eat good and we work out, that we can just assume our health is going to be fine. I'm fully convinced and take this with a grain of salt because again, you guys, I'm not a doctor or anything. But this is the way I'm approaching my life, where I got to be more proactive with this stuff than ever before, because I believe that it's more than just, drinking a lot of water, eating a clean diet and working out to protect my heart. And, so then, what you spoke about that test that you recently had and did. How is that different than some of these proactive? Like, how can we be proactive with this? Because it sounds like, because dude, with your cardiovascular system is so complex. How would you even get in there and know if there was an issue? Other than before, like you said, you're experiencing chest pains. It's kind of like previously we didn't really know until there was an issue.
Well, we can do all the things that we've talked about for years, right? You can pay attention to your blood work. You can pay attention to your heart, your blood pressure, your resting heart rate, all those things that we know to be healthy, but still you can fall through the gaps, right? And even if your LDLs and HDLs are out of ratio or whatever, that doesn't necessarily correlate exactly with how much soft plaque you have, and if you can do anything to change it, or if you improve it, if you change your blood labs, if that does anything to reduce or change unstable plaque. And so, all the things that we do and we've done for years to be proactive, there's kind of a new tool in the tool bag now that really I think is a checkmate for heart health. And what it is, it's a scan, it's a CT scan of your heart. It's called the Coronary CTA. And they shoot you with a little bit of dye that goes into your vascular system. They do that CT, which is like a 5-second, it's not even that, it's like a 2 or 3 second shot of your heart throughout a couple beats, throughout a couple cycles. And now, and then from that, the company that I work for now clearly takes that information and generates this report that not only you have a visual representation of your artery, you actually can see the artery. You can see if there's any lesions, what soft plaque is on there, how much it is. They actually measure it in millimeters cubed, and then classify how dense it is or not dense it is. And so now, when I say, gosh, what are my chances of having a heart attack underwater? Or am I one of those guys that, is going to have a heart attack and be totally asymptomatic? I mean, 50% of the people that have heart attacks have absolutely no idea there's anything wrong with their heart. No idea. And 70% of those people die. So, if that's just like the normal, right? I mean, everybody that I know, not everybody, most of the people that I know that have heart attacks, it's been a surprise. The rest are, end stage disease, or they're kind of older, they've had heart issues, whatever. And so anyway, so now I can look at that image. I worked with this guy, Dr. Michael Twyman. He's a preventative cardiologist, and we'll have a link up if you want to hook up with him. But it's not just me looking at these images, but I look at this image and I think, okay, there's a really, really 99.9% chance now that I am not dying. I'm not dying from a conventional heart attack. And so then, I'm working with him. He takes a look at it and says, yeah, everything looks great. You have more soft plaque than we'd like. So I'm going to come up with a program for you, and we're going to try it out. We're going to run it for 18 months, maybe 24 months. And then we're going to retest. And when we retest, we can see if we've had any impact on that soft plaque, or, if we've transformed that plaque into either magically going away, or we've transformed it into calcified plaque, in which case it's safe, it's never going to rupture. And so now, like never before, you can have the ability to see how much soft plaque you have, exactly what status it's in, and then work with the physician to come up with a plan to treat that, to either reverse your disease process or transform it into, something like safe calcified plaque, or whatever the treatment plan is going to be. But then you have a way to measure it and check it and see if that therapeutic plan is working. I mean, we can say, yeah, if a guy loses 40 pounds of body fat, you're going to improve your health. But, it's going to improve your health, but is it going to actually reverse your heart disease? Well, we think so, but now you can prove it. Hey, my doctor's really been pushing me to put on, to get on this statin. I'm going to have this test done, and we'll see if I really need to be on a statin. And then if I go on a statin, I can check it in 24 months or whatever interval, and see if it's actually done what we wanted it to do. So it's taking the proactive or preventative portion of heart care to a whole new level. It's just never been there before.
Yeah. I was, and I don't know if this is to be true or not, but I heard something the other day. Now, this was just on another podcast, but that, as a society, at least here in America, we're the sickest that we've ever been. And again, I don't know that to be true or not, but it wouldn't surprise me. And the reason to be, and this is just my own hypothesis of this, is, like we've kind of come, most people look at this as like they don't take responsibility of their own body. Or even their own finances. Like I'll just use finance as an example. It's okay. I'm going to, go work my ass off, and I'm just going to hire, hand it over to this stranger that I don't know through maybe a company I've been told to go through, and allow them to manage and put, kind of my future retirement fate in their hands. And they don't do their own due diligence on it. They don't, like I look at the same thing of, yeah, I'm going to go, pick and choose and do my due diligence on which doctors I'm going to work with. I'm going to, also do my due diligence on, what, I'm going to choose to listen with their advice and get, sometimes multiple, multiple different people's opinions and so forth, and then do my own due diligence to come with my own conclusion. But then on a proactive standpoint, you and I were having a conversation before we hit the record button here of again, back, when I worked in the hospital, it was like, dude, the hospital, when I say hospital, I mean, insurance would cover like a $45,000 heart stent, but they wouldn't cover a $300 test that could have potentially prevented, that technology wasn't anything like the technology you guys have now created, which is the first of its kind out there. But that never made sense to me. Why wouldn't insurance cover a $300 or $400 test that potentially could prevent that $45,000 stent? And look, some people would be like, oh, that's wrong. It is what it is. I'm not leaving my life's, like this vehicle, my life, if you will, in the hands of my insurance company or medical. Like, I'm going to go out there and be proactive with it, do my own due diligence, and take that on as my own responsibility. So what I mean with this, a lot of people today are kind of like, well, I didn't know. They didn't tell me that this food wasn't, I shouldn't be eating this. They didn't tell me I shouldn't be doing this. They didn't tell me that, I should have been doing these tests, versus these tests. My doctor didn't say that. Well, at some point, we've got to take responsibility as human beings over our own life. And unfortunately, with our medical system the way that it is, a lot of this, like, preventative health isn't something that's big out there, and this is something that, you and I've been doing, preventative health work, you longer than me. I mean, you've been my mentor in this space. But for years, but I mean, that's, out of pocket stuff that we've, done, and chose that on our own. So outside of that rant though, of just,
just
go ahead.
Just look at like 6 years ago, right? When we were talking about TRT 6 years ago, how hard was it to go find a physician that would put you on TRT? I mean, you get laughed out of more offices than you get accepted. And now there's shit, you don't even need to be in the same state as anybody now. You can find somebody on every corner almost I'm not saying they're all treating, to the best standard, but now it's mainstream because people were like, hey, insurance didn't cover that. Insurance wouldn't test for your hormones. And we wrote a book on the importance of having that, what implications having your hormones out of range would be for overall health, cardiac, prostate, brain, everything. And it's not really the fault of the physicians, and it's not, the fault of the insurance companies. It's the fault of us, because the typical person who goes into an office and their doctor says, hey, I can give you this medicine or you can lose 20 pounds of fat. 99% of the people are going to take that pill, man. 99%. And so that's really where we're at. That's, we're in a model that we've created. We as lazy people have created this model because almost every time people will take that pill, man, rather than doing the hard work. I mean, that's it. That's why we're in the position we're in. That's why healthcare is in the state that it's in. Yeah. When you go to a doctor and they say, hey, your LDL is a little bit high, or your total cholesterol is 201, I think you should go on a statin. They may not really truly think you need a statin, but they have to follow that because that's a guideline. That's a guideline now. Because, now if they don't recommend a statin and your cholesterol is 201 and you drop dead of a heart attack, their spouse or whoever the family can come and sue you for not recommending a statin because their cholesterol was high. Because that's the guidelines now. That's where we're at. Instead of, hey man, why don't you take some statin? I want you to do some for you. I want you to lose 10 pounds. That would change. Sorry.
We lost your mic a little bit there. You coming back?
Sorry, dog's going off. When if you improve your body weight or you improve your health, then your blood, all your biomarkers improve significantly, or at least immediately. Sorry guys, I'll let you continue, Josh.
Okay. Yeah. And I don't know if it's from your dog in the background, but your mic was cutting out a little bit there too. Because I mean, and I've caught myself going down this before too, of, you could trace back about 1910 when our medical system changed and Rockefeller, realized that through petroleum, he can make a lot of money in medicine. And, but then from there still, like, is to your point of, if we as a society rejected kind of the easy solution versus, the real right solution. And I'm not saying for everything. There are things where you need, medicine for. I mean, not everything's treatable through lifestyle choices and food and I mean, there's goods and bads of all things, right? So, but I guess to, the point I really wanted to make there is, just to encourage people to adopt the personal philosophy that this is your body, you own it, it's your responsibility, and if you want to go out there and be proactive, cool. I mean, we all kind of see the consequences of the masses, at least if we don't go that proactive route, with that. And, the kind of follow-up question I have for you, Jim, is, in the past, like with heart studies that have been done in the past, it's okay, injection of the dye. I don't know if if it was CT scans or if that's been kind of commonplace for a time with the dye, but I believe, I mean, what was like just a radiologist kind of looking at that and maybe making their best guess as to, what's going on versus how is this, test different than kind of what's been done before?
So if you go down and get a coronary CTA, you'll get a radiology report, and that's a human being looking at this, looking at all the images, and they'll come up with they'll report on what they find. So I'll take my personal report for instance. The radiology report, everything is normal, no abnormalities, no stenosis. Everything looks good. Literally, the report was this big. We're good. Had nothing about how much soft plaque I had, what state it was in, nothing to be proactive about. It was just, again, it was just like, hey, you don't have symptoms. You're cool, man. We're good. You don't, nothing, we can't fix you today. There's nothing to put a Band-Aid on, nothing about preventative. And so what this company does, it takes that billion pieces of data or so that comes from this image, and it runs it through AI-based algorithm, and it comes up with a more data than you would ever get from a radiology report. And that data would include actual images of your arterial pathways with any type of plaque that's built up or attached inside your arterial wall. And moreover, from the preventative side, if you're trying to be proactive, it measures how much soft plaque you have in cubic millimeters, and then tells you the density of it, which is valuable because it shows you images if you have lesions, because that's really what you need to know to see if, to be proactive in either reversing or transforming that plaque so you don't have a heart attack. I mean, that's the proactive part of this, is you actually have actionable, trackable data now. So, based on my report, my physician recommended a few things that I wasn't doing. I'm incorporating those. So when we go back in a year and a half or 2 years and check, if my total amount of soft plaque hasn't progressed at all, well, that's kind of a win too. Maybe it was progressing and I slowed it. Or if it's reversed, or if I've transformed some of that into more stable calcified plaque, that's not ever going to do anything. It's not, doesn't have the opportunity to rupture. Well, then that's a win too. I'm testing my therapy to see if it's actually doing something, or if the disease continues, then I change up my therapeutic program and try something else. Because as is, right now, and based on, even if I got a coronary calcium, just looking at the calcium scan, I don't have any that says, well, you're safe for 5-10 years, whatever it is. You have a good chance of not, having a heart attack. Well, that doesn't mean I'm slowly developing it. At a year 5, I'm going to be in such a position I can't reverse it or deal with it. So this is really the only way to have a trackable, actionable way to look at your coronary artery disease and have something to do with it. It's data that you can use, and it's just hasn't been there before. And again, the basic model, or the model that we use now of medicine, is to treat acute problems. When you have something pop up that's a symptom, or you're symptomatic, or you have something broken or whatever, then you get treated for it. It's no longer, the doctor's going to sit you down in the office and really get to the root cause. They can't. They don't, unless you have a concierge physician. And that's why, self-paid medicine is more popular now than ever. I mean, that's why you and I both have self-paid doctors, because, I want a doctor not to just, look at my blood work and give me a prescription or say, oh yeah, here you go. It's like, well, why do you have high blood pressure? Why are your LDLs high? Well, why is your HDL crashed? Let's understand that, and then try to treat the root of the cause, not just put a Band-Aid on it.
Yeah, and one thing that you said there was so important of you have a data, a KPI, if you will. Again, I'm always, my mind's trained to, for business, but it's,
Right.
like you got the control and you got the variable, right? So it's like, okay, like, I want to be able to, track whatever that KPI is that, leads to know if it's working or not working, if it lead to success or not. And, without having that. So like you said, okay, in a year and a half, you can go back and see if it's actually improving, not improving, which of the protocols is making the impact, and so forth. So, and I know there's probably no way of knowing this, but if previous to this technology, this, AI with the cardiologist that you're working with that, invented this technology, if you will, if it was, if a doctor's looking at a scan and they can't see the actual level of soft plaque, I mean, that's just like a coin toss, right? Like there's no really true way of them being able to give a real prognosis, or, I mean, they're just having to make a best guess, but I wonder like what percentage of that is actually.
Well, we're gonna, this isn't the case for everyone, I'm sure, but when a radiologist looks at somebody like my report, right? It's not really, maybe that person could have quantified and measured by hand, all the soft plaque that I had, because it's there to see. Maybe they had a program that, would highlight it and they could measure it or whatever, but that's not what they're trained to do. That's not what physicians request. They want to know, hey, is there anything that's causing a symptom now? Is there anything I need to know about? Is there a train wreck in there right now that we need to deal with? It's not about preventative medicine. And that goes back to the whole, this whole thing, medicine right now as a traditional model isn't set up to be preventative, it's reactive. And that's why, we do the things that we do. And that's why, this technology now is so important, because it takes proactiveness in a whole new step that we've never had available in cardiovascular disease.
Yeah. And I think if people haven't had awareness of that, I think we can all see and have awareness of that, with the era that we're in, with what's going on right now. And, I'm not taking sides here, trying to make this into anything else. But if we look at, what's going on with the current pandemic, I mean, it is all just the after the fact, potential solution versus, like what are preventative things? I mean, the first thing that I did was, reached out to our doctors and was like, hey, like assuming, I get this thing, how can I put my body in the best position, to go out there where I can conquer this thing and be fine. And,
Right.
was a specific diet, specific, specific supplementation, specific things. And I, I don't know if I got it or not, but my whole family got it. Everybody in my office got it. And I was the only one that had zero symptoms. So I don't know if I got it or if I did have it, just didn't have the symptoms, but I've been following that protocol since day one. I mean, a higher dose than maybe I normally would take with a D3, higher dose of vitamin C, and cutting out all toxins. I mean, I cut out alcohol 100%, like just everything. I've been, very proactive with this, but we don't hear that talk. And I'm not trying to dog on anybody. It just is what it is. But again,
we're not in the proactive business, man. Nobody is. Yeah. Nobody is. I think just now the CDC admitted that 75% of the COVID related deaths were the people had at least four comorbidities. And, if your body is already under attack daily from you, when something pops up, no matter what it is, if it's a flu, a cold, or it's you having to run down the street, or, you're in a car accident, you get smashed, and now you're in the, trauma ER fighting for your life. I mean, your body, you can't roll in there 50 pounds overweight with diabetes and expect, hey, my body's going to respond well, or I got, you got a good chance of surviving this. You just can't. It's not realistic.
Yeah. So I got a few other questions for you, but before I jump into those questions, just, I know you mentioned before that you'll have a link, I guess. So if anybody that's watching or listening wants to go check out this test that, the company that you work with now offers and does, we'll have a link for that. But like, what's the process like? Because this is something that they have to go to their doctor on,
Right.
or somebody local with, right? So, you know, can you kind of walk us through what the process is?
Yeah, so this is so new, it's not everywhere yet, right? It's just becoming known, it's just rolling out. You know, more and more physicians are learning about it, more and more patients are learning about it, and the infrastructure is kind of being set up. But there's a few cutting edge, as always, there's a few cutting edge people that are always ahead of the curve. And one of those is a guy that, you know, my personal cardiologist is Dr. Michael Twyman. And he practices in all 50 states, telemedicine guy. So if you are interested in having a test, or, you know, you just want to have a consult with him, he'll probably do some blood work first, look at some genomic markers, you know, do a specific LDL study. Or if you just want to jump in and tell him you want to have this test, you know, he's the guy that can make it happen. You want a clinician like that that specializes in preventative care to look at this and then come up with a plan for you, or just look at it and assess it and say, hey man, you're golden. I wouldn't do anything. Or, hey, here's just some things that I would do to prevent, you know, you from having arterial plaque. And he specializes in, you know, biohacking and all this. And the treatment plan that he formulated for me was really, it's really cutting edge, you know. And so that would be the person to reach out to. We'll put a link below if you want to reach out to his scheduler and find out more about it. You know, that would be the way to go with it.
What would be cool, and I don't know if this can be done, but if, you know, as I go through this, to almost have, you know, him or you walk through, you know, my live report, you know, with everybody here. And, you know, you know, I'm a little nervous about offering that or saying that out there, you know, because because look, I lived, you know, first half of my life in you know, is morbidly obese and, you know, massive abuse of alcohol and other substances over years, and in the business world, lots of stress. So, you know, even though I work out daily, I'm sure that, you know, my report may not look as good as yours. You know, so,
well, dude,
you know,
listen,
but you know,
I'm
also, you know,
my bodybuilding, you know, my bodybuilding background. I mean, I was taking more steroids in the US, or the China swim team in '88 or whatever. You know, I mean, I was worried too, but that's even better. You know, if we uncover something that you have, that, I mean, what a find. You know, we can, it's proactive. But you know what? Let's get you through the process. If you don't feel like sharing it or whatever, we can do mine live. And Dr. Twyman would be happy to come on board and describe everything that he's seeing, and then describe more, you know, in actual terms, not my vague, you know, meathead description of what coronary artery disease is. But yeah, we could certainly set that up for sure.
Perfect. So, all right. So we'll have a link below. Is there anything special that anybody needs to just click on the link and they'll know what to do, or anything? Or
yeah, you link to his website. It'll take you to Apollo Cardiology and just request an appointment. Cassidy is his office scheduler, and she'll coordinate stuff with you if you wanted to. But I think it would be fantastic to have him on and go over through all this stuff. He's a really neat guy, man. He's into all kinds of biohacking stuff, and super healthy guy, cutting edge. You know, that's the guy that you want looking at your heart.
Yep, love it. So now, and I know that we've talked a lot about this stuff in previous podcasts, you know, but so maybe this is somebody's first time tuning into you know, one of this specific. When I say this specific podcast, I know do a lot of podcasts that are business related or real estate related and so forth, you know, but kind of more of the health and fitness, you know, podcast series that we do here. But then, you know, even more specifically to heart health itself. You know, so for people to go out there doing it, and obviously taking this type of a test would give more specifics, you know, but let's just say, I don't know, like I've had family members that I've talked to, you know, since you've, you know, sort of working, you know, with this specific physician on this specific, you know, test. You know, I've had conversations with family members talking about this, and, you know, offer new introduction. And, you know, I mean, we all have those people in our lives that maybe are resistant to doing something like this, and really finding things out, you know, or maybe somebody, you know, because this stuff isn't always, I don't believe that this is covered by insurance. I don't know if it is or not.
It's not, no.
But, you know, let's just say it costs, you know, I don't know the exact cost, but I'll know soon enough as I get mine done, you know, but preventative healthcare is, you know, as you mentioned, concierge medicine isn't, you know, when I look at this, to me, it's cheap, right? And I'm not saying because I make more money than the average none of that, but I look at this as like, dude, I'm going to invest more in this. People will go out, like when I talk about, working with my optimal physician that I work with, and I'll tell people the costs. And they'll be like, "What? Oh man!" And I'm like, "Yeah, but dude, like you just spent $2,000 on a freaking 75-inch LED TV, and it comes down to just priorities. What are you going to invest your money in? And for me, I'm going to invest in the right foods and getting the I guess, like, again, this is my vehicle. People go out there and buy a $60,000 truck, but in their lifetime, they'll never spend close to 60 grand taking care of their body. And I'm like, dude, priorities are just fucking off for most people, unfortunately. So, but that's their choice, right? So, but with that being said, whether somebody's in a position where they financially can't quite afford to do a test like this, or maybe they have loved ones, family members, or so forth that, they just can't get to do something like this. What are just some kind of like basic things that most people can do? Obviously still they probably should go consult their own doctor and so forth. But just to be proactive with this, from, a working out and diet. And I know that in a past podcast, you've mentioned some, kind of over the counter supplements that, can kind of promote and aid heart health. I mean, is there, just a few simple, not whether simple or not, things that we can all do that seem to be more proactive for everybody?
Well, it goes back to, a lot of the things that we've talked about many times before, and that's getting body fat off of yourself, doing cardio, eating clean food. I mean, all those things. Supplemental wise, I mean, I think that almost everybody benefits from taking omega-3. And, there's a specific test that you can have that measures the amount of omega-3 that you have and if it's enough. Dr. Twyman did that on me. And, I've been taking omega-3 for like 25 years, showed, pop that I could take more. And so there's, generalized things like that. Omega-3s, yeah, somewhere in the range of 4 grams a day, probably, if you're an adult male. Aged garlic is supposed to help. Vitamin D with a K complex is normally recommended for that. And then other than that, you have to kind of dive in a little bit, and there's some specialty stuff that you can take. But I mean, generally, that's typically what's associated with heart health, or, supplements, common supplements that people take for heart. The D does a couple things. If you're working with a proactive physician now, one of the things that you can do to kind of dial in your LDL and triglycerides and off is a thyroid study to make sure that your thyroid's operating normally, optimally. Because if it's not, it can throw off your lab work, and that kind of throws you down a different road. But yeah, I mean, generally speaking, that's the stuff we've always recommended.
When it comes to cardio, because I think a lot of people too have this, mindset of, oh, I got to go out there and become this like gym rat, health nut, but at least, and I could be wrong on this, which is why I want to, ask you for myself and as well as for our listeners here. But, at one point, something that I heard was, I was kind of shocked that it was far less than I thought that of cardio, at least to have an impact on your cardiovascular system in a greatly positive way. It wasn't like you got to go out there and run or walk for an hour and a half a day. I heard something like 20 minutes a day or
Right.
something at a certain heart rate. It is when it comes to that, for those that are kind of maybe resistant to, starting to work out because I think it's going to take hours, like what is kind of, just kind of a good benchmark that people should hit for a day when it comes to cardio for overall heart health?
I mean, you can do 20 minutes a few times a week and improve your health, right? So it really depends where you're at. If you go, higher end, I think Peter T was talking about doing, a higher hit type of workout that was very short. I think it was 15 or 20 minutes, not even that, I believe. And, where you're going all out for a minute or whatever it was, whatever his protocol was. And his data showed that, had massive improvements on cardiovascular disease. And, it really depends where you're at. But if you're, some people in the fitness community are hating on cardio and doing that, but most of us sit in a chair for a significant portion of the day. And doing, walking around your neighborhood or walking the dog or doing a 15-20 minute walk isn't going to hurt anybody. I don't think you need to walk for an hour, but 20-30 minutes a day as a general recommendation, always good.
Yeah. And I don't know what it is, but I just feel better, dude.
I feel better too. Yeah. I love it.
I mean, just how I digest food, I just don't feel as bloated, and I probably over cardio, but I enjoy it. I enjoy hiking. I enjoy mountain biking. I recently started I got a V-Force, like 75-pound vest. I'll, throw on,
wow.
Hit that 40 minutes a day. And then I jump rope every day in addition to my resistance training. And yeah, I might sacrifice some muscle, but I don't care about having 18-inch, arms and, life. It's like, dude, how do I feel when I wake up in the morning and this, 16, 17 hours that I'm operational throughout the day? Like, how do I feel, I just feel a hell of a lot better, dude, when I've got some cardio on a daily basis.
Well, I just turned 50 this year, man. And so this last, 20 years or so, or however long I got, this is really the fight, you don't want to show up at this portion of your life when you're 50 or whatever. You don't want to show up at that portion of life in bad health, because it's just the back half of it is just going to be miserable, man. You want to show up at 50 ready for this fight that you're entering, because, I'm going to be fighting to keep on muscle mass. I'm going to be fighting to keep mobility. And, part of us being what we do and being in the optimal space, we want to keep our quality of life as high as we can for as long as we can. And that's the game. And so if you can get fat off yourself, you're cardiovascular fit, you got some muscle rolling into, enough to do the things that you want to do. I mean, that's what you're shooting for, man. That's what you want.
Yeah. To that point, I know I might've sounded a little negative with, modern day medicine and so forth. But to the flip side of that, those that are proactive with this, I mean, today, like, it's a brilliant time to be alive, dude. I know 70-year-olds that run circles around 20-year-olds that are like just in insane shape, have insane bodies, that have energy for days, that, so if you choose to, like, man, it can be, the game's changed, and there's so many ways to be proactive and to, have, I guess, your quote unquote golden years be extremely freaking golden, dude.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I've always thought, man. I want my quality of life to be as high as it can for as long as it can. And then, we crash the wall hard, not really, not weighing 80, 105 pounds, trying to hit 120 years old. That's not what I'm doing. And I want to be able to continue to be able to do the physical things that I'm doing now, for 20 more years, and to do that, you got to put in the proactive. You got to be the proactive, your own proactive care advocate. You got to be aggressive with this stuff.
Yep. 100%. All right. So those watching and listening, we're going to have, again, I'll get a link from Jim. We'll put that below. For those maybe that are driving, dude, that, can't click on a link. You said that the company's called Clearly.
Yep. But you're going to have to go through a physician to get that. So, Apollo Cardiology in St. Louis, Missouri. It's Dr. Michael Twyman.
Okay.
And he's specializes in preventive cardiology, and he's licensed in all 50 states. So,
so if you guys are driving, listening to this on iTunes or wherever, I'll make sure the link's in there too, in addition to YouTube and so forth. So either way, we have a link that you can just click on and get to the right spot. So, Jim, I know how busy you are, man, and as always, dude, truly appreciate taking time to be here with us, man. It's been a lot of fun, been an honor, brother.
Yeah, it's good to see you again, man.
Yeah, you too, my friend. All right, you guys, thank you for being here, and we will see you next time. Peace.